Nico Minoru is going to enter the game this month. Well, June, that is. The champion is going to be, and is tipped as a great champion to take against those that have buffs, which is really cool. But can she hold it when it comes to damage? What's going to be a best rotation? We're going to look at that in this video. There's several things that have interested me about this champion. First of all, being the pre-fights. Secondly, being the suppression of buffs. And thirdly, being the SP1 miss mechanic the champion has. Of course, being like a direct counter to the Serpent and the Hulkling and many others as well. I think a lot of people might be interested to pick this champion up because of the way that she's able to just, well, suppress and do a lot of damage. You're going to see here, she's got miss. So the champion you're going to take off against this will probably be like miss counters. I'm not saying there's a huge amount of science-based miss counters. Of course, Human Torch might be one of the ones of interest. But it's certainly good to see a Mystic, unlike Enchantress, that you can actually feel like you could actually counter. But let's have a look more about her abilities, especially as the Deep Dive and Spotlight should be live now. So let's take in those two things and make a video about it. The key factors for this particular champion is that if you want to early access June 5th, Crystals and Arena June 12th. She refreshes a buff immunity debuff, refreshable buff immunity debuff. God, that seems a bit weird saying that. Inflicts poison or acid burn, handy for different situations. Utilizes the adrenaline mechanic, which we've seen she's able to like take back a lot of. She can sacrifice something to then gain something back. It's not a bad thing. It's just a new thing, which we'll talk about the mechanic, shortly, and we'll have a look at visual elements of it. She gains power when opponent gains buffs. Well, that's handy and makes her only suitable for nodes on top of champions and / or cosmics, or specific types of mutants or champions that gain buffs. For one-time use, pre-fight effects means that you can only have Unworthy, Absorb, Ward and Burn, which has the replace of poisons with Incinerates, handy in certain circumstances if there's an immunity or a difference, or there's a node. Grants immunity to poison and ruptures, which means she could be quite specific counter to something on, I don't know, Alliance Wars defense. She boosts her adrenaline, which we've talked about and we'll see even a bit more, and inflicts buff immunity at the start of the fight if you need instant access to that going up against certain champions like Hulkling, Serpent, or many others that have this kind of like instant buffs type situation. Now, there's a lot of talk with the champion about adrenaline and how the adrenaline works for building back your regeneration. We all know this over the years we've had it, but the way the Kabam have kind of like tipped it now is that it exists for a long time, but Nico expands what's possible with it. She gains it on defense, benefits from it, converts it back into health more easily, and carries it with her between fights. These abilities are still more useful. Adrenaline is subject to neither heal block nor regeneration rate, making Nico's manipulation of her own health bar very reliable. So this is kind of like a new era of regen, which is great for sustainability and survivability. It's largely going to be down to, is this champion going to be one of the better options for something like incursions, where you might need to recover a lot of your regeneration, but not necessarily that's the only place. There could be other areas in the game where this could be advantageous, endgame content. Abyss, Necropolis, Epic of Pain, the Wheel of Fate, which is not the Wheel of Fortune because it's the Wheel of Fate. Kabam wants us to play a painful game instead of a relatively guessy of words game. There's also a bit of an unusual twist of fate with the champion. We're using the word fate a little bit more here. When the opponent gains a buff, Nico passively gains 2% of her max power. When one or more are removed or prevented by immunity, she gains 3%. Any significance in that? Yeah, there is actually, in that this is how that she gains like the bulk of her power. Because the twist is right here. Nico does not benefit from Mystic Dispersion Mastery. Instead, each rank increases the base potency of her personal power gains by 10%. So yes, that's all. It's kind of like, no, she doesn't gain from it, but instead she does. So she gains it by a different means of benefiting from it. It's kind of I don't know whether or not to look at this like it's a bit of a nothing thing or it's a bit of a something thing. So yeah, she kind of like similar to The way she manipulates the adrenaline bar is similar to how she manipulates the Mystic Dispersion Mastery. She kind of like, it's like sitting underneath the Mastery and Regeneration as, yeah, she does exactly the same, but different. Her pre-fights are intriguing. That's one thing that I think stand out about this champion. What they do, how they function, and Kabam say the spells in the following section will always be available in Battlegrounds, because you might feel there's a situation where she might be best suited to help out. You know, it might be like, oh great, I've put her in, I'm going up against a champion that has got, here's a good example, Immortal Abomination. You're like, okay, well, I know he does like poisons or something like that. Well, why don't we get immunity to that by going, I'm not saying you should do this, but Nico gains immunity to poison and rupture effects. Or you might be like, well, this champion does ruptures, let's go rupture immune. Let's kind of like do that particular pair up. Oh, this works perfectly. There might be something in Alliance Wars where you're like, it's suited for this. Possibly. You know, these are all kind of decent setups as you go in for each individual quest. They also persist, so if you want to revive, then you can go back in and find that the pre-fight's already put there. But effectively, there's a lot of new things that Kabam say here with the pre-fights. The first spell here is important to be aware of when defending Nico, as you'll always have access to it. The third and fourth abilities allow her to target specific fights, but choose carefully as you'll only have access to them once. I think we know that. And Stimulate, because you can see there on Absorb, gains 55% Stimulate passive while blocking. Stimulate is a new effect that increases adrenaline gained from hit damage by a flat amount. The default for a 6-star is up to 30%, so as a Nico at that rarity using the pre-fight would gain 85% of that damage taken from blocked hits as adrenaline. So effectively, we saying here, like, you go into a fight with, you say you're low on health, you're then putting Absorb on, you're going into block, and then that regen's there. Like, sorry, the adrenaline's there, building back the bar, and then you just need to kind of hit out at the enemy in order to then recover that particular element. So there's another example in the live stream, but this at least, I think, pinpoints what we need to see. So you can up there, you see that the adrenaline kind of bar has been increased, which means that the blue numbers, this has kind of gone through the cycle of it, but the blue numbers that appear are the ones that allow you to see your regen in bunny ears, your adrenaline, like, recover back. So that's going to hopefully, between fight to fight, allow you to recoup your lost damage, so to speak, with it. I'm seeing if, like, right here, you can see there, the adrenaline bar has been built right there, like that, and then recover back to 100% health. So that I think is how that is being pitched and works. Or like what you can see right here, where you can see that the adrenaline spike bar and then, you know, recover back for Nico. I guess rotation is going to be important. If you're doing a heavy attack and consuming your current health, then keep it as an adrenaline bar. You'll then have to hit out at the enemy in order to, like, recover it back. According to Kabam, that's the way that you get most of your fury, because you saw that there was passive furies. She has to trade in health for extra adrenaline, but doing so will grant her furies. So there you go. And reading back the notes, the champion seems like it's pretty straightforward. Like, first of all, you got to place pentacle buffs on the opponents. You can see on screen that's happening. And then part of course, the new mechanic is do a heavy attack, consume health, and switch to adrenaline. And this aids in making the fury passive. So you can see that in the top left-hand corner. The Zeal passive will then help to stop adrenaline from decaying, again, which you can see on screen for a moment that was there. And then you throw an SB2 to do poisons or acid burns and put a buff immunity on the enemy, which you can see, there we go, it's done right there. And the sequence has to be, and then it's like SP1 after to go invisible, which you should be seeing, there we go. And then it's thrown SP1 to go invisible, we've seen that one, and then do the sequence again, SP2 to SP1. I think that was how Kabam kind of like pitched that one. Those pre-fights are going to be so helpful, depending of course on situations. But yeah, this seems like a very straightforward champion and fun enough to necessarily play. There is going to be a big question on using Double Edge and Liquid Courage masteries. Because of the length of time, I think it's the poisons on. You can go poison immune when it comes to the start of a fight, but you can only do that once per fight. So that means that that's only going to be viable for, what, a certain amount. Now, I don't know how that, with adrenaline and the mechanic of getting health back, then it could be quite good for you running that particular mastery set. If you're doing an SP3 rotation as standard, then that's going to be a big question as well. Especially as the attack gains 1,841.6 attack, depending obviously on rarity, for each damaging effect on the opponent. Now that means you've got to have a high amount of damaging effects, which if you're not putting your poisons on, then that becomes a bit of a problem, doesn't it? Because the poisons are largely situated around the SP2 side of things. They are on for 30 seconds, which at least gives you a chance to build back the power, but you have to have buffs on the enemy to build back the power to then, and Mystic Dispersion could potentially help, to then get to that particular point to then throw an SP3. So there's a lot going on, SP2 to SP3 rotations. And Kabam do say that this attack can deal significant damage, but also ramps Nico for longer fights, making it much more easy to upkeep her utility and to ramp her damage effects. So that's, I suppose that is good. It just gives you a larger expanding option of what and how you want to use the champion and what for. I think a lot of people will opt to use the champion for things like cosmic suppression. And if we're talking about if a cosmic opponent is immune to any of Nico's poisons, she inflicts a matching acid burn instead, giving her that kind of expansive option, because a lot of cosmics are poison immune. Not every single one, but there's a good chunk that are indeed poison immune. So this is providing an additional option to take down some of those pesky cosmics. Even more so because the champion has a buff immunity, which is very important as well. And depending on the type of cosmic, and I'm talking about some of the ones right here that still are very, very frustrating because they start off with some buffs, Hulkling right there, then at least you've got that kind of frontward suppression with it. So cosmic line dead with Nico being an option. I'm not sure how King Groot functions because he does debuff shrugging. Is that something you might want to start off as standard? Could he be a more viable option? And the nullifying based champions, I think how buff immunity and nullification immunity work, that is something as well that's going to be quite cool. But debuff shrugging of the buff immunity debuff could be interesting with some interesting pair-ups. We'll see. What are your thoughts on the champion, the rotation, and some of the things that we've covered in this one? Put it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Check out some other content located on screen. Maybe one more video for today, and then there's some other coverage to do before we start the week off with Battlegrounds season metas.